When I say the word mummy, what pops into your head? Probably pyramids, ancient Egypt, and a body wrapped in linen strips. Or maybe even Brendan Fraser fighting undead villains and a terrible CGI version of The Rock. But here's the twist. Egypt is not the only place on Earth where mummies exist. In fact, cultures all over the world have been making mummies, sometimes on purpose, sometimes completely by accident. Some of them even mummified themselves. Sounds wild, right? Today, we're going on a global journey to dig up the many strange, fascinating, and downright bizarre ways humans have preserved the dead, from deserts and glaciers to volcanic caves, smoky fires, and even modern science labs. Let's begin with natural mummies cases where the environment did all the work. No human intervention required. Take the Gobelin mummies from Egypt, dating back more than 3,300 years before the Common Era. These people weren't embalmed with fancy rituals. They were simply buried in shallow desert graves. The scorching heat and bone-dry air sucked all the moisture out of their bodies, leaving bacteria with no chance to thrive. As a result, their tattoos are still visible under infrared light today. Jump across to the Alps, and you'll meet Ötzi the Iceman, a 5,000-year-old mountaineer preserved in a block of ice. He still carries his tattoos, as well as the arrow wound that killed him. Notice the pattern? Whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold, the trick is the same. Get rid of water, and microbes can't break you down. Other examples are just as fascinating. In Iran's salt mines, salt crystals literally pulled the water out of buried miners, leaving behind astonishingly preserved remains. Salt also kills microbes thanks to chloride ions, the same reason chlorine keeps your swimming pool clean. Meanwhile, in Northern Europe, bog bodies were preserved in oxygen, poor, acidic wetlands that destroyed bacteria but left skin and hair intact. So, when the conditions are right, Mother Nature herself becomes the world's most efficient embalmer. But nature isn't the only one capable of this trick. Humans sometimes stumbled onto accidental methods that worked surprisingly well. In Korea's Joseon dynasty, coffins were sealed with a special cement-like mixture. As it hardened, it generated heat, roasted the microbes inside, and locked the body away from oxygen. The result? Accidental mummies? A similar thing happened in Mexico and Hungary, where sealed crypts unintentionally created perfect preservation chambers. And in Austria, researchers discovered a vicar from the 1700s whose body had been packed with wood chips and soaked in zinc chloride solution. His organs weren't removed, yet the chemicals prevented decay. Was this a deliberate experiment? A way to transport his body safely? We don't know for sure, but the result was one of Europe's strangest preserved corpses. Sometimes, even trial and error can give us immortality, or at least a really long shelf life. Now, let's move to South America. Long before Egypt perfected its art of embalming, the Chinchorro people of the Atacama coast were already mummifying their dead over 7,000 years ago. That's the oldest intentional mummification we know of. At first, they removed skin and organs, stuffed the body with earth and sticks, then put the skin back and painted it black. This became known as the black style. Later, they switched to the red style, leaving more of the body intact but still removing organs through incisions, and painting the body bright red with a black painted face. Eventually came the mud-coated style, where smoke-dried bodies were covered in mud and pigment. What's remarkable here is that everyone was mummified: men, women, children, even babies. Unlike in Egypt, this wasn't just for elites or royalty. For the Chinchorro, preserving the dead was a community-wide practice that lasted more than 3,000 years. Think about that. 3 millennia of handing down an art form of keeping the dead among the living. If that's not dedication, I don't know what island. Of course, we can't talk mummies without going back to the Nile. Egypt turned mummification into a cultural phenomenon. According to Greek historian Herodotus, there were basically packages of mummification depending on how much you could afford. The deluxe option? Remove organs like the liver and lungs, preserve them in jars, toss the brain, but keep the heart the seat of the soul. Then wash the cavity with palm wine, stuff it with spices, wrap the body in layer after layer of linen soaked in resin, and voila, the classic mummy you see in museums. The mid-range option? Inject cedar oil into the abdomen, which dissolved the organs into a sludgy liquid and then drained it out. And the budget option? A simple intestinal flush, cheap, fast, and not exactly glamorous. But whichever method you picked, the body was always packed in natron, a natural salt that dried it out completely. Thanks to this, Egyptian mummies have endured for thousands of years, remaining the most iconic faces, well, preserved faces of human history. The variety doesn't stop there. In Japan, some Buddhist monks practiced soku shinbutsu, or self-mummification. They switched to a starvation diet of pine needles and resins to dry out their bodies while alive. In their final days, they meditated inside wooden boxes, sealing themselves off until death came. Because their bodies had so little fat and water, they resisted decay naturally. It's one of the most extreme acts of devotion you'll ever hear of. Meanwhile, the Aleutian people of Alaska relied on volcanic caves. After removing organs and fat, they stuffed the body with dry grass, washed it in running water, then left it in warm, dry caves heated by volcanic vents. Even in one of the wettest, stormiest regions on Earth, this method kept their dead preserved for centuries. And in the Philippines, the Ibuloy people created the legendary fire mummies. After death, the body was tied to a chair and smoked over a low fire for months. The smoke, combined with salty brine and sun-drying, turned the corpse into a natural relic. Wrapped in blankets, the bodies were finally laid to rest in mountain caves. Other island cultures, from Australia to New Guinea, practiced similar smoking and sun-drying rituals. Across the globe, different communities found ingenious ways to cheat decomposition. You might think mummification is a relic of the past, but humans are still experimenting with it today. In 2011, a British taxi driver named Alan Billis volunteered to be mummified using authentic Egyptian techniques as part of a scientific study. The results gave researchers new insights into ancient chemistry and ritual. Then there's plastination, a modern process where water and fat in tissues are replaced with polymers like silicone or epoxy. This method creates bodies and body parts that are dry, odorless, and durable. You've probably seen plastinated specimens in the famous Body Worlds exhibitions, or in medical schools where students dissect preserved human models instead of cadavers. So from prehistoric deserts and icy mountains to smoky caves and 21st century labs, one theme runs through all of this. Humans cannot let go of the idea of preservation. Whether for religious reasons, cultural pride, scientific curiosity, or sheer fascination with immortality, we've always been obsessed with holding on to the body long after life has gone. And here's the question I'll leave you with. If you had the choice, would you want your body preserved forever? And if so, which method would you pick: smoke, salt, resin, or plastic? Think about it. And while you do, don't forget to subscribe to Why Is That Lab? Because just like the mysteries of mummies, there are countless other strange, fascinating stories waiting to be unearthed.